Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast. And I'm really excited today. I'm with Connie. Hi, Connie. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Abe. How are you?
Doing really good. Thank you so much. You look great today.
Well, so do you.
Hey, thank you. Man, it's rare to get a compliment on a Friday, right? Because everyone's so excited about Friday. So we also have a special guest with us today. Her name is Shae. Hi, Shae.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. And actually, part of the reason we wanted to bring Shae on our show today was to have a conversation about, kind of what's happening sort of, I guess you could almost say globally, but definitely here in North America with a generation that has been called millennials. And that's a funny term because, obviously just because you're born in the same year or same sort of section of years as somebody else, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're exactly the same as them. But there's no doubt that I think this group is experiencing some challenges, definitely that my generation didn't face. And I missed the cut for being a millennial, I think by like 2 years or something like that. But even that, even though it's not a long time, it's actually crazy, the differences that we've seen. So Shae, first, before we dive into that, because everybody knows about Connie and everybody knows about me, but tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. So I am a millennial, so, I can definitely relate on a lot of these topics. But yeah, other than that, I really love entrepreneurship, and I've been learning and educating myself and getting out there over the last couple years, and just stretching my comfort zone. As far as family, I am a single mom. I went through a divorce about 3 years ago, and that was obviously a hard time in my life, but I saw it as an opportunity to really look at myself and areas I needed to grow in, and it actually, from that point, it just became a really great way to grow and to really flourish in areas that I was scared to before. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
I just want to key in on something you said, and that's actually really interesting to me. You said that divorce, it was an opportunity for you, a growth opportunity. So tell us a little bit about that, because you're not very old, right?
Yeah.
Been married, divorced, single mom.
Yeah.
But, somebody could say, well, all of that is a horrible tragedy, poor me. But it doesn't sound like that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, it definitely felt like at the time, it felt like the end of the world, because obviously, there's a lot of heartbreak involved. But I would say the first year I started just being more honest with myself and saying, this is a fork in the road where I can still continue with some old habits or say, oh, woe is me, or I can start taking responsibility for my life and making choices that are going to help me and help my son. I think my why was really looking at my 5-month-old son at the time and realizing he's now going to be looking up to me, and I really want to be a role model for him to look up to, and when he gets older to say, you know what, I didn't make excuses, but I used this tragedy, so to speak, as a way to thrive and to grow. So
that's really cool. And so, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, we I'm surprised that we can maybe go so deep so fast, but in this conversation, because honestly, we don't just want to come along like some demographers or some sort of sociologists. What we want to actually have is an honest conversation, like what is really going on out there, and how can this generation, who, in my view, is so talented and so brilliant and so educated and so creative and has so much to offer. But when you actually look at the mental health stats, it doesn't seem like they're the happiest generation, like on the whole. And, Connie and I, we do a lot of work in mental health, and that really concerns us. I mean, what are some of the things you've observed? Because I know you're pretty connected with a lot of millennials, and particularly around mental health. What have you been noticing?
I notice, and Shae, tell me if I'm way off, but I've just noticed relationally, friendships, a lot of them are lonely. They don't know how to find community where they feel like they can be themselves. Relationships are also hard, just marital, intimate. I don't know. Shae, what have you noticed around that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there's life, there's a lot of things to do in our day and work and responsibilities. And so Even found in my situation, I only have so much free time because the free time I do have is really stewarded towards my son. And so when I think about how can I maintain relationships, it's actually can be stressful in my mind because I look at the time I have and then the friendships I want to foster can feel a little bit overwhelming at times. And then there's the side of just finding people you connect with, and it can be a difficult process because people are a bit, I find, more reserved. I think when I was a bit younger, maybe you kind of have your cliques in school and things like that. But when you get out in the new world or you're moving into a new city, it's kind of like you have to start over, and so that can be a challenge for sure.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. And so how are we, like in your conversations with friends and what they're experiencing, what are you noticing when it comes like specifically to mental health? Are people happy? Are they sad? Is it just sort of normal? Some days I'm happy, I'm sad. Like, what are you seeing?
I see a little bit of both. I think from what I've talked to with different people, I think a lot of people can feel a little bit in despair about the future, just because the world we're looking at, we've never, this is uncharted territories. We're in a whole different world we were in 30 years ago. And so, even people older than myself, they don't even know what to expect really. So that unknown, I find, has really instilled a lot of fear into a lot of people. So.
And I mean, obviously then that fear almost feeds on itself, right? So then it becomes more negative piled on top of more negative, and pretty soon you're like, well, why should I even move ahead? So I've known you now, I wouldn't say like super close, but been around for over a year or so. And, I'm sure you have your days, but you seem pretty well adjusted. Like, what has been helpful for you when it comes to mental health?
Yeah, so practically I've dealt with a lot of mental health in my early 20s and here and there throughout the years. And so there's a few things that I've learned to do over time that has helped me. One of them is just making sure I'm moving my body every day. I think it's far underestimated what that can do to our brain and our mental health. I know when I wake up, I know I don't feel like getting out there to the gym or moving my body, but I will tell you, when I'm not sitting in the gym, I guess if I'm in the gym and I see people come in, I see their faces and they just look like they are not in the greatest mood. But when I see people come out, because the treadmills are right by the doors, they're smiling.
Totally.
And so it's not just me. It's the people that have learned to instill that. I can see a huge difference. So yeah.
I mean, movement, right? You know a little something about movement?
Movement is medicine.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think about that because when you're stuck in a bit of a mental health pit, like let's just say you wake up and you're depressed or you're feeling anxious or stressed or whatever, obviously the last thing you feel like is packing up your gear and heading out to the gym, or heading down like I do to my basement where the gym is, or I go for a run. And you have to contradict how you feel in order to fight for your mental health, right? Like your mental health isn't just, I wake up feeling great today. It's actually like, I feel horrible, but if I'm going to get back to normal or stability or happiness, then I have to fight. Yeah. But it's worth it every time, right? It's worth it. So movement, I think, is really, really important. So thanks for sharing that. When I think about it, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm not in my 20s anymore, and I got my first house when I was 22. Granted, it was hard to do that. It was a super big stretch. I had to work my tail off like night and day. Of course, I was single at the time, had no kids, and so it was pretty easy to do that. But I'm going to tell you that I think that even if somebody worked like I did at that point, like unless they're like some hardcore investor or something like that, I have no idea how somebody could buy a house in Canada, the United States at what's going on right now. And to me, I think that's just an example of the bigger problem. I do think we live in a society where the elites are eating cake, and the politicians and the people at the top of the food chain and everyone else is literally left to fend for themselves, and that's horrible. So no wonder there's despair. Like, what are some of the money, financial or business challenges you see out there? and how have you been able to navigate those?
Yeah, so with money challenges, I find the average person is going to college right after high school. I don't know about you, but when I was 18, I had literally no idea what I wanted to do. I just kind of picked something and went into it. And in doing so, halfway through, I realized this isn't actually what I want to do. And so, when you come out of that, or maybe you do finish your 4-year degree or whatever that looks like, now, we have this debt that we're carrying. And then we're expected to buy a house and keep up with the Joneses, but we're burdened with debt just getting out of school, and even the jobs that we get are not, like, realistically are not going to pay off our debt. So it feels like it can feel like we're just always behind. And so looking practically, I thought to myself, I need to get into entrepreneurship. I need to find different ways to make money.
Yeah.
And because I practically cannot see how I can get ahead doing what I'm doing. So.
Yeah. And I mean, again, that feeds on the despair. And actually, like, the biggest challenge in a country like Canada, and actually a lot of what they call the developed world, is, declining birth rates, right? And I know, like, here we are talking about declining birth rates, but it actually all feeds in itself, because if I don't see a financial future and I don't see a way that I can make my own way in the world, sort of independent of my parents at some point, right? It doesn't have to be now, but at some point, then why would I start planning to have a family? Like, it's almost impossible. And so, again, this doesn't represent everybody in that age category, but it sure represents a ton of them.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. Like, we can say, well, you need to have more kids, but actually, it's really irresponsible to just be like, well, I'll have 19 babies if I can't pay my rent, right? So I think millennials know that too. So they're trying to figure out, like, how do I balance all this? And I think that gets back, fundamentally, like, as human beings, we are social creatures. And our mental health is not like some independent thing where I wake up and I'm like super confident, happy, healthy guy. My mental health is about you, and your mental health is about me. So maybe the last thing we just chat a little bit about is the whole relational thing. I mean, this past week, I just happened this week, I talked to 3 millennials. 2 of them were women and 1 was a guy. And they're just talking about how hard it was in terms of the dating scene, right? And I had to say to them, like, I'm so grateful. Like, I felt horrible saying it because it almost felt like I wasn't bragging. I just thought, like, my goodness, I couldn't imagine being single right now, like how tough it would be. Because, like, what do you do? Do you go on Tinder? Do you go on Facebook? Do you go on Instagram? Do you go on, I don't even know the name of dating sites. Like, it just shows you how ignorant I am. Like, I wouldn't have a clue. Like, what do you do? Wander around the mall and then you just look creepy? Like I don't know. Like, it's really tough, right? So what are some of the strategies, or maybe not even strategies, but what has been helpful for you? Because I'm sure there's always people out there. Mm-hmm. And yet you don't just want to settle, right?
Right.
And yet you also want to balance that against the realities of just kind of living in this world, and that there's no kind of perfect person out there, at least that I've discovered. So what do you think is helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I realize someone's not going to just show up on my door, unfortunately. So, but I definitely think even now compared to a few years ago, or my parents' generation, where, they met in person, they didn't have all these social media apps where you can just like a person's picture. It was like a full-on conversation they had with another human being, which seems to be this foreign thing nowadays, unfortunately. And so, I know a lot of people do gravitate to dating apps. I had some friends of mine encourage me to get on those, and I tried one of them out, but I'm not saying it doesn't work. I've actually heard a lot of success stories, because life is busy, especially if you have a kid. Like, the time you do have to get out and about around people,
right.
Realistically, it's like you don't have, it is limited.
Yeah.
And so, but I even found with that, it was a whole new world to me, because I had never been on them previous. It was like people would like a picture, but they wouldn't say anything. And I'm like, I don't know, do I just not know how to use this, or like, can we at least like start a conversation, So I found that I've had to push myself in starting conversations. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I just love that. I mean, because it is about the conversation, right? I mean, you just have to be, by the way, I think you know this, but I'll just remind you, you just have to be married like 5 minutes to figure out that it's certainly way more than just looks. And, looks are important because I think you want to be attracted to that person. I mean, you are making a commitment to spend a lot of time with that other human being, but beyond the surface sort of attractiveness, it's like, who are you as a human?
Yeah.
And, do we have the same values? Are we kind of roughly headed in the same direction? Are we going to, raise our kids in a way that at least doesn't cause us to be fighting every day, right? Like you want to have peace in your home. And that's so much about alignment, right? And so, I think this has been a great conversation. Folks, one of the things we're going to be doing over this next month or so is Shae's going to actually be doing some videos for us. So you're going to see her sprinkled in some of our content. And the idea is to speak to some of these areas and to offer, we hope a little bit of solution, right? We don't just want to talk about the problem. I mean, it is tough out there. You know it and I know it. But how can we, kind of move forward? And one of the great things about Flourishing is we create a community. And in a community, it's not about everybody being the same or facing the same challenges. It's actually the diversity of that community that gives us strength. And so you might want to go to failuretoflourishing.com. There's actually a free online course there that I would really love for you to consider just downloading and then just diving in. Because a lot of the things we talk about there is, how do I take what I might feel like is the wreckage of my life, the hard things that I'm going through, the pain that I'm experiencing, and actually turn it into something beautiful. And your pain might be different from mine, but we've all had it, right? And we're all going to have it. That's the nature of human living. But if we find strategies for solving it, but also navigating it not alone, I think that's really the way. And so thanks for taking your time today, Shae. How could somebody find you or follow you online?
Sure. So my Instagram is, I believe it's just Shae, Shae at Shae Beth. And then I'm also on TikTok. We'll probably get more active on there in the next few months. I believe it's SB_121212. So
SB_121212. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. And Connie, any parting words?
Well, just want to say, if you're a millennial out there and you're looking for a community, because finding community can be hard when you're in that age group, we have a place for you. We would love to, we were just chatting even before we went on live, Shae, and you were talking about you had a mentor. You had a mentor when you were a young person, even younger than you are now, and what a difference that's made in your life. And so if you need a mentor, if you need a coach, if you need a community, we've got that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of millennials in our community and, real diverse community. And so please do check us out, failuretoflourishing.com. Thanks, everybody.